Speaking of Marvel, I thought we'd do a quick little discussion about Loki episode 2.
Sure.
I enjoyed it. Have you
I
seen it?
didn't. Yeah, I didn't. I really enjoyed it too. I didn't love it to the
Yeah.
degree of the first episode. Um,
Yeah.
there's a bit of is you you actually messaged me. You're like, hey, is something right about this episode? And I didn't know what you were talking about. And I feel like is it a spoiler to mention what you were asking? Because I felt it was
It's the way it begins.
the first like 5 seconds, it was jarring to me too. I had to question it of like, wait a minute, what's happening here? And and because of that, it does feel like they there's some stuff that feels like they rush past it. It's kind of weird. Like there's a lot of great scene work still. I think there's some amazing scene work here. The acting, it's top notch. Directing, cinematography, still really top notch. But there is some weird pacing things and some stuff that probably didn't need to be as gestated on for as long. And then other parts feel rushed. It's not as crisp or solid. I still like it. I'm still invested. But yeah, like the first one was just so like exciting and and visually impressive and like whoa weird. And this one really it speeds up, but then it really pushes the brakes.
Yeah.
It's weird to talk about without going into specifics. It's not as strong.
I would say it's the mirror image of episode 2 from season 1. And by that I mean it's about some characters meeting up with other characters. We know they're going to meet up. McDonald's spoiled the entire scene. If you know that, then you know what I'm talking about. Um, and it's kind of going through the motions to get to that point. Almost, it's one of those episodes where it's like, well, we know these characters have to meet up at the end. How are we going to present that in a way that feels natural and fluid? And it's just kind of going through that now that can be a problem, but where I think it excels at is in the execution of it. And there's some really good moments that they have with certain characters, especially Loki. Throughout Loki, we've seen him kind of, doing maybe anti-hero stuff, but he's never out and out being a full-on villain that he once was. And in this episode, he does some villainous stuff where it's like, oh, I can see that, and we really get to see Tom Hiddleston kind of flexes his villain stuff. It ends in a quite a climactic, well, not climactic, but there's consequences to it, and it's sort of a reverse of season 1, episode 2. And when you see the episode, that might make sense. I'll explain it to you.
I didn't even think about that. I didn't even think that.
Yeah,
I did not even think about that. But you're 100% right. I will say too, Owen Wilson's work in this episode, really strong stuff. I love what there's another character in there. I don't want to. Yeah, it's so hard not to spoil stuff. There's another character there who I was like, oh, I didn't realize this character would be so prominent. But Owen Wilson and him have some of the most memorable stuff out of Loki for me. I
yeah,
really love their scene work together.
yeah.
Again, it's like
There's
solid scene work. Like the scene where the acting is impeccable, man. It's really, really just that's the interesting thing is it becomes a little bit more like it's something that you kind of want. It becomes less like big world building and a little and it does zero in more on the characters. And sometimes that does mess with a little bit of plotting. But I still think it's better than a lot of other things we've been getting, like by a lot, you know.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Basically, it's if you wrote down what happened in the episode and sent it to someone, they'd be like, "Didn't really sound that good." But it's the way they execute it and carry it
Mhm.
out. It's not. I personally didn't enjoy it as much as the first episode, but I feel it was definitely executed well. And as far as episode 2 in a season, like in across pretty much every single TV show of all time, episode 2 is always kind of the step down because they get a big budget for the show. They put most of it into the pilot, and then the second episode's when they kind of have to tone back and maybe set things up for what's going to be coming in the episodes down the line. Like episode 1 of a season, I always find is kind of almost self-contained. Like it has a middle, beginning, in it. Well, beginning, middle, and end. or middle, beginning, and end with Loki
Has
doing
a
time
middle,
travel stuff.
beginning, and an end.
But yeah, yeah. So it's episode ones are normally outstanding. They put everything they can into it because they want the show to get a big audience behind it, talk about how good it is. And then episode two is normally sort of a step down. And then it's like episode four where stuff really kicks off. I feel it was your classic sort of episode two thing where it's a slight step back. You're getting more centralized character performances, but the work there is really good. It's just
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, I'd say episode one was like a 5 out of 5, and this is like a 4 out of 5. If that
I
makes
think
sense.
I think that that part that brings it down to a 4 out of 5 is just a little more strongly felt because episode one was so good. You know what I mean? Like if episode one wasn't as great as it was, I don't think there would be because it's still it's the weird part. Like it's still no, it's still a really good episode. It's just that part that is a step down, you feel it a little stronger only because you're coming off of how great. So I think actually like putting that out there would help because now that we put that out there, people might lower their expectations and they go and like, I don't know what you're talking about. That was better than episode one because we lowered, how
Yeah,
it goes because we lowered the expectations.
still a really good show though. But
Definitely.
speaking of